Thank you for listening to the GSMC basketball podcast, where we discuss all the news in the world of basketball. As always, my name is Ben Brown. We are back here on a Friday, leading you into the weekend, and it is a huge weekend in basketball. I cannot stress that enough. We are in the Sweet 16. Some of the teams are in the Elite 8. We're down to 12 now. After last night, we did have 4 teams punch their ticket into their respective regional finals. Talk about the 4 games from last night. I'm still feeling a little under the weather. I do apologize. But we will talk about the 4 teams from last night who did punch their ticket in to the Elite 8. We'll also preview tonight's games. Talk a little bit about the NBA. I feel like the NBA kind of has a little bit of a problem. And it's not about resting players. That's a problem. We've talked about that this whole week. But I think there's another problem that's really big in the NBA. So I'm going to stress that, what I think that is. And then we'll talk about some news at the end of the day. Derrick Rose, Georgetown, the top recruit in high school, Michael Porter Jr. All that stuff coming up later on the show. So let's get right into it. Not going to waste any more time than I have to. Talking about the NCAA basketball tournament from last night, we have the Sweet 16 in the Midwest region. We had the number 7 Michigan Wolverines against the number 3 Oregon Ducks. I had Michigan in this game. I'm not going to lie. I really was riding that Michigan hype train all the way through the tournament. And I thought it would really keep going last night against Oregon, and it was close. Oregon did come out on top 69-68. The Ducks do get a big second half from Tyler Dorsey. The young man does it again in the tournament for the 3rd game in a row now. He's averaging 23 points in the tournament. He only averaged 13 in the regular season. So he's really putting on a great performance. He had 20 points last night. He shot 5 of 7 from behind the 3-point line, and that was a huge factor in the game. Michigan did miss a shot late that would have given them the win. Derrick Walton Jr., he had a fantastic game. He had 20 points in this game. But, I mean, he just missed a shot at the end. It was a deep 2-pointer that would have given them the victory, but it did not fall. Michigan really stayed alive in this game because of the 3-ball, and that's what kept them really going this whole tournament, even in the Big Ten tournament as well, is their ability to shoot the 3, and how it's been really the ultimate equalizer just in basketball. The 3-point shot has really changed the game the last few years, specifically with how the Warriors have done things. And Michigan last night took 31 threes. They simply kept shooting them. They made 11 of them, so they didn't do too bad. But the fact that they just kept on shooting them and really kept them in the game, it seemed like Oregon was really ahead most of the game. Michigan would kind of make it close, and Oregon would stretch a little bit to like 6 points, then it would go down to 2, then it would go down up to 8, and then back down to 4. And then Michigan did have the lead late by about 3 with a minute and a half. But Tyler Dorsey and Dylan Brooks and company do get the victory, and they win that 69-68 over Michigan. Our second game of the day was number 1 Gonzaga against number 4 West Virginia. And honestly, my bracket last night took a big fat L. I had West Virginia beating Gonzaga in this matchup. It did not happen. Number 1 Gonzaga in the West do win over West Virginia 61-58. West Virginia had a lot of chances late there to get a 3-pointer to tie the game. I think they had 3. Javon Carter had a fantastic game. He had 21 points and 7 rebounds for the Mountaineers. But they just could not get one late. They missed a couple of them. Nathan Adrian did a good job of getting some rebounds, keeping it alive. But then at the end, Gonzaga played absolutely fabulous defense and did not allow West Virginia to even get a shot off there at the end. And that was absolutely crucial. The whole game, Gonzaga played fantastic defense. West Virginia shot 16 of 60, which is 26.7%. West Virginia played good. I mean, they shot 26% and they only lost by 3. I think a lot of that in due part to how they were at the free throw line, 21 of 29. But if West Virginia has even just an average shooting night at 35%, which is below average, they still win this game hands out. So you got to give a lot of credit to Gonzaga for how they played from the defensive side of the ball, because they're mainly known as an offensive team. Nigel Williams-Goss, Premish Karnowski and company, they're really known to play really solid offense and not so great defense. But it was really the other way around in this regard. For West Virginia, you knew what they were going to do. They were going to try and turn the ball over, and they did. Gonzaga turned it over 16 times. The full court pressure by West Virginia was giving Gonzaga a lot of fits, but Gonzaga caused a lot of turnovers themselves, 23 of them. So they were able to get it done, and they advance to the Elite Eight, the top seed in the West. Good win there for Gonzaga and company. The third matchup was really not even a matchup. Number 1 Kansas against number 4 Purdue. Kansas wins 98-66. They win by 32. Purdue was up early. I mean, they were up by 8 at one point really, really early in the first half. But Kansas, they're just absolutely a powerhouse. In the second half, they outscored Purdue 51-26. It's almost like you don't really see Kansas come in, you're kind of hanging along with them, and then all of a sudden, they go on like a 10-0 run in a couple of minutes, and you're not even sure what just happened. Great, great game last night from Frank Mason III. As always, the senior guard had 26 points. Devontae Graham also had 26 points. Josh Jackson with 15 points and 12 rebounds. I mean, they can literally do it all over the floor, inside, outside. This was my biggest takeaway from the game last night. Kansas just absolutely are head and shoulders better than every other team in the NCAA tournament. And it's going to be really, really hard to see anybody beat them. I mean, Purdue were a 4 seed. They were 27-7 coming into the game. This is a team that won the Big Ten, for Christ's sakes. And they got absolutely destroyed by Kansas by 32. I mean, this is... I realize it's just one game. It is a one-game elimination tournament, so anything can happen. There's still some good teams around out there in the South especially, and anything can happen. But my biggest takeaway from last night as a whole is that Kansas are head and shoulders better than every other team in college basketball. And honestly, when they get going, they are absolutely scary because they could do this to any team out there. Kansas rolls 98-66 over Purdue. And then the last matchup was, quite honestly, another good one. We had 3 great matchups last night. Number 2, Arizona, and number 11, Xavier, the lone double-digit team left in the NCAA tournament. And Xavier pulled off the upset, 73-71. Trevon blew it, a great game last night. He's been doing it all game, or all tournament long, really. 25 points last night. He's been averaging 25 points. He's the tournament's top scorer so far through 3 games. And quite honestly, Arizona kind of blew this one. I mean, they were up by 7 with just a couple of minutes left. And then Xavier go on a 9-0 run in the last 2.5 minutes of the game to win the game by 2. Arizona picked the worst time to go on a slump and a drought, and Xavier picked the best time to go on a run. They say basketball is a game of runs, and they couldn't have picked a better time to go on one. 73-71. Alonzo Trier had a shot to win it at the end, a three-pointer, but he did miss. The sophomore did have 19 points in the game and 9 rebounds, but he did shoot 3 of 10 from 3. He had Lorne Markkanen. He only shot 1 of 6 from 3. Arizona really struggled from behind the line. They only shot 25.9%. And Xavier played really, really well. They shot almost 53%. And they kind of just hung around the whole entire game. You know, they were down by 2 at the half. And then really that last 2.5 minutes was really what made the difference. So a little bit of irony here is that Sean Miller, who coaches Arizona, used to coach Xavier. So he loses to his former team he coached. And he loses to his former assistant, Chris Mack, who's now the head coach of Xavier. So a little irony there for Sean Miller, for a guy who's never made the Final Four. And Arizona, this was a perfect chance for them. Gonzaga, in most people's eyes, including mine, were the weakest of the number 1 seeds. But they simply could not get it done. So now Xavier advances on into the Elite Eight. Cinderella is still dancing. Technically, I mean, Xavier's still a really good team from a big school. But, I mean, if you look at their record, they were 21-13 going into the tournament. So not the greatest. One of the last 4 teams in, really. So technically it is still Cinderella. But they're from the Big East. I mean, they're a good school from a good conference. So now we have number 1 Gonzaga. It's number 11 Xavier in the West. And in the Midwest, we have number 1 Kansas against number 3 Oregon. So that takes us to tonight's matchups in the South region. We have number 4 Butler against number 1 North Carolina. That'll be a great matchup there. Number 7 South Carolina against number 3 Baylor in the East. Again, in the South, we have number 3 UCLA against number 2 Kentucky. I think that's going to be the best matchup of the night. A lot of great storylines. Of course, UCLA did beat Kentucky earlier in the season in Rupp Arena, although that really doesn't mean much now. Lonzo Ball against De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, Bam Adebayo, and the rest of the Kentucky Wildcats. And then number 8 Wisconsin against number 4 Florida. With that, we'll take our first break of the show. After the break, I'll talk about the NBA games from last night and the other problem besides resting players I think the NBA has here at the GSMC Basketball Podcast.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back into the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, talking about the NBA from last night, and then we'll get in depth about a problem I think the NBA has and look at some games for tonight. So the Toronto Raptors defeat the Miami Heat in Miami 101-84. DeMar DeRozan, his second straight game with at least 40 points. He had 40 exactly last night to go along with 6 boards and 3 assists for the Toronto Raptors. The Mavericks beat the Clippers 97-95. Seth Curry, 23 points, 4 assists, and 3 boards. DeAndre Jordan had 14 points and 18 rebounds. JJ Barea was ejected from this game for shoving Blake Griffin, literally just throwing him on the floor. So, I mean, he'll probably get suspended for that, but yeah, I mean, who knows? We'll have to see what happens. The Spurs defeat the Memphis Grizzlies for their third straight victory, 97-90. LaMarcus Aldridge, great to see him back in the Spurs lineup. He had 23 points and 8 rebounds in the victory there. Then the Trailblazers defeated the Knicks 110-95 behind 30 points from Damian Lillard. The Nets defeated the Suns last night 126-98, and we're going to get more in-depth with the Suns in just 1 second before I look at the games for tonight, because I want to talk about something the Suns did last night. They set a record last night for the youngest lineup ever in the history of the NBA. The Suns last night, starting 5, age-wise, was an average of 21 years and 14 days. As I said, that's the youngest ever. If you're looking at just college teams that are in the Sweet 16, the Phoenix Suns lineup is younger than 8 of them. 8 of them. An NBA lineup. Only Purdue has a younger average of 20 years and 265 days. The Phoenix Suns had a younger starting 5 last night than Arizona, Xavier, Kansas, Michigan, Oregon, West Virginia, and Gonzaga. 21 years and 14 days. Now, if you look at their starting lineup, some of these guys honestly deserve to be starting. So Devin Booker's 20. He's fabulous. He's going to be he's already one of the better young shooting guards in the NBA, and I think he'll be a star. Marquise Chris is 19. They just drafted him in the first round out of Washington. He's almost a human highlight reel. I compare him a lot to like a guy like Hassan Whiteside, maybe. Alex Len's been there for a while, coming out of Maryland. He's 23 years old. Derrick Jones Jr. is 20. He was in the dunk contest. Then you have Tyler Ulis, a small point guard, from Kentucky. He is a rookie. So they have some guys that deserve to be starting, but they've also shut down a lot of guys for the rest of the season because, quite honestly, the Suns they're terrible. They're one of the worst teams in the league record-wise. They're trying to give their young guys some more experience because their future is obviously not this year. It's the years to come. And I get all that. I understand some of that. But I feel like the NBA has a real serious problem, and it's tanking. Look at this. I mean, I'll give you a prime example. Let's look at the Los Angeles Lakers. Since Magic Johnson came in there, what has happened? Well, literally like his first or second day on the job, he traded away Lou Williams to the Houston Rockets. Good trade for Houston. They get another great bench scorer, guy that can knock down the three. Good move for them. Lou Williams is the Lakers' best player. He averaged the most points per game. I think it was about 17 at the time he got traded. So the Lakers are obviously not building towards this season. They're tanking. They just signed Timofey Mozgov this offseason to a 4-year, $64 million contract. All of which is guaranteed, I might add. This is the NBA. It's all guaranteed. And they shut down Mozgov this past week for the rest of the season. A healthy scratch the whole rest of the year. The Lakers are clearly tanking. The Sixers were clearly tanking the last 3 years. And trust the process, and yeah, it might work. But they're even still tanking. Embiid is gone for the year. Ben Simmons is not going to play this year. They're clearly tanking. A lot of teams are doing it. The Kings traded away DeMarcus Cousins because they're starting fresh. They're going to have 2 of probably the top 10 draft picks in this upcoming draft. They're trying to lose as many games as they can to get the best possible draft picks. Everyone else is doing the exact same thing. It's not good for the league. It's not very fun. It's not something we want to go out there and watch. I mean, the Brooklyn Nets are the worst team in the NBA, and they beat the Suns by 28 points. You would have sworn the Nets were the Warriors last night against the Suns. Like, they were that much better than what the Suns had out there. That is so sad. But because you have things like the draft lottery, so the more losses you get means the more ping pong balls you have. So that's a problem. You have the draft lottery. You don't have a set order of where you draft. So the more losses you get, the better chance you have of getting number 1 pick, which Markelle Fultz or Lonzo Ball, I would take Lonzo Ball. I think he's spectacular. But, of course, every team's going to have a different idea. So you have that there. And then you just simply have too many games in the NBA. I talked about it on Monday. The problem with people resting is because there's simply too many games. If you were able to limit the season, which is not going to happen because these teams are making a ton of money, and the players are making so much money from all these TV deals and revenue, and the owners are going to have to close their buildings more and rent it out to other things like concerts and like the Disney on Ices of the world and things like that. So it's never going to happen. But if you were to limit the season, you'd have less meaningless games. Don't get me wrong, you'd still have some, and you still have somewhat of a tanking problem. But if you were to get rid of the NBA draft lottery, which I honestly hate, how could you have the worst record in the league and not be guaranteed the top pick? That's just sad. And then if you were able to get rid of some of these meaningless games, then you would not have as big of a problem with resting players and with teams tanking. Because there's no disrespect to some of these guys, but Derrick Jones Jr. does not belong starting. Tyler Ulis does not belong starting. I realize you want to get him experience and everything, but they do not belong starting in the NBA. They're just not NBA starters. I mean, Derrick Jones Jr. was in the D League for half the year. Now he's starting on the Suns every night out. That just doesn't work. So I think it's a big problem. I don't know if Adam Silver is going to address this. I don't know if he's even going to take it this way as I'm taking it. But, I mean, something's got to happen. And Steve Kerr brought up the idea of maybe having the season limited, taking a pay cut. He'd be on board with it, but I know the players would not. But, I mean, something's got to happen. This is just kind of sad. So, nevertheless, we'll see what the Suns do when they are in action tonight against the Boston Celtics in Boston. Some other games on the schedule, we have the Nets taking on the Wizards. The Cavs will take on the Hornets. Have to see how LeBron and company can rebound after that loss to Denver a couple nights ago. The Pistons will be in Orlando taking on the Magic. The Nuggets will take on the Indiana Pacers. The Sixers will be in Chicago to battle the Bulls. The Bucks will host the Atlanta Hawks. The Rockets will host the New Orleans Pelicans. The Lakers will battle the Timberwolves. And the Golden State Warriors will be at the Oracle taking on the Sacramento Kings. We'll take our last break of the show. After the break, we're going to talk about news in basketball. Georgetown's looking for a new head coach. Derrick Rose says he cares about winning more than money. And Michael Porter Jr., the top national recruit in high school basketball, he's looking for a new college after he has decommitted from Washington. All that coming after the break at the GSMC Basketball Podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
So Georgetown have fired head coach John Thompson III as of yesterday. Thompson spent the last 13 seasons in charge of the Georgetown Hoyas with an overall record of 278 and 151 with 8 NCAA tournament appearances. But this season, they only finished 14 and 18 and 5 and 13 in the Big East. I mean, simply put, they just didn't really make the tournament enough under him. He hasn't made the tournament in 3 of the past 4 seasons. The one season they did make the tournament, you remember, it's when they were a 2 seed, and Florida Gulf Coast was a 15 seed and upset them. So, simply put, just didn't really make the tournament enough. And it sucks. He has a legacy. I mean, his dad was there, of course, during the 80s, everything he did there. And it's unfortunate, but I mean, it's sports. All good things must come to an end. And now Georgetown's going to definitely move on, and it's still one of the better jobs in college basketball. And I'm sure they'll be okay. They need to just bring in someone who, of course, can sort of rebuild and revitalize this school and this program. And it's still a great program. I've actually been to Georgetown myself, looked at everything. It's a fantastic campus. And they'll get someone in there to go and fix it in there. I'm kind of surprised that he was fired. Yes, given, like I said, everything that he and his dad have accomplished there and just the legacy of the Thompsons at Georgetown, it was a little surprising. But, I mean, I'm not really surprised because you got to kind of do what's best for the school over time, and this is what was honestly best for them. He did get them to the Final Four in 2007. You'll remember that, of course, with Jeff Green and those guys. So, I mean, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. And I'm sure he'll probably still want to coach somewhere, and he'll probably still get a chance. He was with Georgetown for 13 seasons. He said that he was grateful for the fans and everything for their support, and he's honored to have coached for them and mentoring young student athletes and everything. So, I mean, it's a good opportunity for him to try and go somewhere else. Maybe he can rebuild another school, but for Georgetown, they're definitely looking for someone else. So now you have openings in 2 of the biggest schools. You have openings in Indiana, openings in Georgetown. Even you can consider Washington as well out here on the West Coast since they got rid of Lorenzo Romar. So, I mean, there is a potential there. And that's actually where we're going to go with our next topic here, is that Washington did have the number 1 overall prospect, Michael Porter Jr. He had a signed letter of intent to attend Washington. Well, not anymore. Earlier this week, he did request to get that taken away, and the school did give him and did grant his release from his letter of intent from Washington. So Michael Porter Jr., the reason he was maybe looking at Washington, a few reasons, honestly. Number 1, he's from the Seattle region, so he's already there. Number 2, his high school. I forget what high school it is. Maybe I can look it up here. But he did win a state championship, have an undefeated season, and he was coached by Brandon Roy. Brandon Roy actually wins the Coach of the Year. You'll remember Brandon Roy of the Blazers and at the end of his career with the Timberwolves. Great, great player. Unfortunately, he had a lot of knee issues, just had to retire really, really young. I felt like he could have been the closest thing to like Kobe Bryant that we might see in a really long time. So clutch in the fourth quarter, Brandon Roy. But anyways, that was his coach, and Brandon Roy, you remember, did attend Washington as well. So there was a little bit of a Washington connection there. And then the big connection was his dad, Michael Porter Sr. He was an assistant coach under Romar at Washington. So it all made sense. He's from the area, well, he attended school in the area. Of course, he's from Missouri, but he attended school in the area to be near his dad. He's already there with Washington. Brandon Roy went to Washington, who's his high school coach. So it all made sense. But Lorenzo Romar was fired, of course, so that means the coaching staff is fired as well. You have to bring in a new coach with his own staff. So Michael Porter Sr. no longer being there, and Lorenzo Romar not being there, Michael Porter Jr. is like, I kind of want to dip out now. Missouri hired Quanzo Martin. He was the former coach at Cal. He took more money, went home to Missouri, got a new job there in the SEC. So good luck to Martin. Did a good job with Cal last couple of years. He's pretty smart. He knows that the Porters are from Missouri. He hired Michael Porter Sr. to be an assistant coach at Missouri. Now, no disrespect to Michael Porter Sr., I'm sure that he's a pretty good coach and could really add to this staff, and Quanzo Martin has a good idea of what he could do. But you can't tell me that a little of this isn't because he's trying to bring in the top recruit in the nation. I mean, he's a 6'8", shooting guard, small forward, good perimeter player, has a lot of length to him. You can't tell me that a little bit of this isn't because he's trying to bring in his kid. Because I feel like there is some of that. You know what I mean? There has to be some of that. I'm not stupid. But Michael Porter Jr. has not officially declared where he's going. So, you know what I mean? There's still possibility. He could go back to Washington. It's all on his list. Missouri's there. Oklahoma's there. And even his brother, Jonte Porter, who is a junior. He's in the top 100 as well for the junior class. He decommitted from Washington last week. And he could maybe be looking at Missouri as well. So you could have two Porters there in the next couple of years, kind of like how the Ball brothers have done in the Plumlees a while back with Duke. So there is some potential there. So I think Quanzo Martin's a little smart for hiring the dad in hopes that he could lure the sons. But Michael Porter Jr. is back up for grabs, I guess you could say. Like I said, his list on there includes Washington still, Missouri, Oklahoma, among others. So we'll see what happens with the top recruit in the nation. We'll always update you here at the GSMC Basketball Podcast. And then real quick, before we end the show, Derrick Rose is an impending free agent. The move in New York has not worked out for really anybody. And of course, he's going to be testing free agency this summer for the first time in his career. As far as what he's going to get, I mean, who knows? He's having not a bad year. The Knicks are not having a great year. But he's averaging 32 minutes a game, averaging about 18 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. Not terrible. I mean, that's pretty good. He could be a starting point guard for someone. But Derrick Rose says that he prioritizes winning higher than money in free agency. He's made a lot of money in his career. Don't get me wrong. He signed some max deals, got a lot of money from the Bulls. So now he's all about winning. He's 20 years old, not too old, but he, of course, has the injury concerns. So, as far as where Derrick Rose could be valuing winning over money, well, gotta look at the top. Golden State, Cleveland, San Antonio, Boston, Washington. I don't see any of these teams signing him, though. Who would want to bring in Derrick Rose? He's kind of a train wreck. I mean, look at everything that's gone on in New York this year. Went AWOL. Last couple of years, he's been injured, wants to rest to watch his kids walk across the stage and everything. He's kind of hasn't said the best things. So who in their right mind would honestly sign Derrick Rose at the top of the league so he could win? I don't know. I honestly do not know. So it might be interesting to see and monitor this summer where Derrick Rose could go because he values winning more than money now. That's going to be it for the show today, guys. My name is Ben Brown. I'd like to thank you once again for listening here at the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Paulina and I will be back in the studio on Monday talking all things basketball, looking at the Final Four in the men's basketball tournament and talking all of the news. So thanks for listening, guys. Have a good day and have a good weekend. Goodbye.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.